And for more on this Clinton offensive and all things politics, we go to John Stanton, Washington bureau chief for BuzzFeed, and a guy wearing a tie pretty tightly wound so far today. Maybe we can loosen it. Welcome, John.
What?
Maybe we can loosen that tie as the segment continues.
Well, we'll see about that.
Already made it
weird. We'll see.
What's
happening right now? We'll see. No, I just wanted to burn up a few seconds there at the top of the interview. What I want to ask you about, though, is when you listen to Hillary Clinton's language there, of course, she is very explicitly going after all the Republicans. She's not picking a front runner or a particular one. And she seems to me to be implicitly noting the backsliding of the GOP. Easy to forget, but the last Republican president actually was for some version of immigration reform. John?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good issue for her to come out on. I mean, I think she definitely took a turn to the left, but it's not totally surprising given where the politics of this thing are. It's good for Democrats to come out and say that, you know, they want to have a pathway to citizenship and they want to expand the ability of people to not be deported. And, you know, Republicans have definitely been moving away from that. This helps her to a certain degree solidify her support amongst the Latino community. You know, this is not something where they're going to feel like they've been pushed back, but it is going to give her at least some ground to fight with them on, as opposed to what's been happening the last couple of weeks where she's been sort of taking shots that it's hard for her to fight back against.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, Republican candidates have to really ask themselves the important question here. Are they willing to risk losing essentially an entire generation of Hispanics to please the base in the primary? And I say that because you look at someone like Jeb Bush, who has stood strong on immigration reform, and in our recent polling shows he's really struggling with conservatives. John, this is a perfect example, immigration, of how different the primary process is from a general election. If they end up nominating someone who is not for immigration reform, how on earth is that going to play in a general?
Well, you know, I think what they're looking at, frankly, is that this is going to come down to places like Ohio and Florida where this issue is not as big of a deal. I think you can certainly win in Ohio if they have to tack hard to the right, you know, on immigration, for instance. But this may be one of the last years of that is possible. You know, and I think smart Republicans are looking at this issue and saying we've got to find a way out of this. The more pragmatic Republicans, though, are looking at it and saying, well, for right now, our primary process is the way it is. If we're going to get out of that, we're going to have to take a hard line on this and sort of retrench to where Republicans were a few years ago as opposed to where they were sort of post-2012.
John, let's get back to talking about Hillary because, of course, it's all about Hillary. But even when it's all about Hillary, it seems to also be all about Elizabeth Warren, who is clearly influencing Hillary's positions. In many moments, she seemed to sound like Elizabeth Warren. And in this week's New Yorker, Barney Frank tells Ryan Lizza that Warren's power comes from actually not being in the race. And Barney Frank says, quote, she has an absolute veto over certain public policy issues. And if she were to even hint at being a candidate, that would be over. Do you think that Elizabeth Warren is more powerful out of the race than in it?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think Barney Frank is overstating her abilities by a fair amount there. But I think that she definitely is, by standing on the outside and sort of becoming this voice for the progressive side of the party, she's got a lot more ability to influence what Hillary's positions are going to be. If she gets into it, then she has to fight Hillary. Hillary's going to have to fight back against her. I don't know that that's something that's going to help her out, frankly. And, you know, she's helping bring Hillary along and to the progressive side. And for you know, Hillary Clinton, this is probably a good thing. This is providing her with the ability to show that she's hearing the base, that she's hearing the progressive side of the party, she's modifying some of her views for them, which is going to be necessary if she's going to get all those folks to turn out in the next election, which is going to be very key for her.
You know how you can be even more influential, John, is by being president of the United States. But looks like that's not happening. Let's talk about the one challenger that Hillary Clinton does have, Bernie Sanders. You know, I knew that there was this energy, some grassroots support for him, but I'm kind of surprised by how many people have gotten involved. He's touting 50,000 people having contributed an average of $43 apiece. 200,000 volunteers, and these are obviously the early days of his campaign. He seems like, in terms of the energy of his supporters, he could have sort of a Ron Paul-like thing going on. These people are really committed and really excited about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, you know, he draws on folks that, let's say, will often vote for like a Green Party candidate or something like that, or a very hard left Democratic candidate in, you know, state level races or congressional races. And those folks, you know, if he's able to bring them into the Democratic Party apparatus, again, that could be very, very good for Hillary Clinton in the end. You know, when, you know, if elections are sort of fought on the margins in the end in terms of getting all of your base voters out, she's going to need those kind of folks to come into the party at the end of the day. And I think, you know, it's been surprising, frankly, to see the number of people that the senator has been able to mobilize. But, you know, there is this large group of people on the left, not unlike people on the right, that want some alternative to the establishment.
And on that idea of alternatives, the Democratic Party releasing its update that they're going to have about 6 debates with people like Bernie Sanders and Jim Webb and Martin O'Malley if he announces. Do you think that Hillary will welcome that, or does that risk reminding people that it could be a wider race?
No, I think she needs to have debates. You know, if there weren't real debates, and if they weren't serious, and if they're not serious debates, it's going to look bad for her. And you know, she's the kind of candidate that needs to be engaged throughout the primary. If she's sort of out there floating alone with nothing to do, frankly, during the primary, she can start to get into problems with, you know, saying things like, it's hard for me, I don't, you know, I'm like a regular middle-class person, that kind of thing, where, you know, she doesn't work well for her. If she's got somebody to fight with, somebody to sort of push back against and have them push her in certain directions, I think that does nothing but good things for her.
John, she was broke when she came out of the White House, John. Don't you believe that?
Had trouble paying her mortgages.
That's right, exactly.
They were literally $14 million in debt.
Sure, and immediately had $14 million to pay off.
They paid it down. They just paid it down.
Multi-million-dollar wedding. They're doing okay.
No big deal.
It's a rise and fall story. John Stanton, thank you so much as always. Now straight ahead.